Welcome to the Mooncast, man.
Oh, thank you. It's my first time using this platform. StreamYard looks pretty sophisticated. Thanks for
Yeah,
exposing me to this new technology.
yeah. It's great, man. It's great. I use it all the time for podcasting. I think it's the best platform currently right now. But maybe I'm a little bit biased. But it's just up to the audience a little bit. Let them know who you are, state your name and stuff, and just let them know what you are, what you're about.
Sure. Quickly, my name is Abhimanyu. I'm based out of Luxembourg here in Europe. And prior to that, I was in the US. And before that, I grew up in India. Went to US for my MBA and worked there for Amazon for a bit. Then I moved to Luxembourg within Amazon. And I was working in supply chain, and I think I got exposed to the whole climate problem in Europe. My current business partner, who was an ex-banker here in Luxembourg, he basically uh, moved to Africa, Ghana, and started doing his palm vegetable oil sustainable processing plant. And I started talking to him because I started to read about the impending food crisis, food shortage, and how Africa is going to be the most impacted region.
Hmm.
Uh, and the more I studied about it, the more it felt like we are not dedicating technology deployment in areas where you really need it to. So, for instance, agriculture contributes over close to 30% of total carbon emissions, but gets a paltry less than 2% of total climate finance, because the finance doesn't end up in places where where it's needed and doesn't make financial sense. So me and my co-founder Rushank, who's currently in COP28 right now, we decided to create a platform, a land stewardship platform here in Luxembourg, where we can channelize impact finance directly into agriculture in Africa, uh, because Africa is, a continent which will need the most food in the future, and it has absolutely zero infrastructure, zero finances, and if nothing is done, the business as usual is gonna end up in cropland expansion, which will have irreversible biodiversity damage. So we're creating a case for money to be flown in Africa and food to be grown, and everybody who invests makes money as well as a direct impact on the ground. So we've been at it for last 2 years, and right now we have almost 1,000 acres in Ghana where we are going farming in February. So that's pretty much bottom line, in a nutshell, explanation of what we are doing. The venture is called Food for Future, but for now it's a placeholder name.
Yeah, when you say Africa, because it's so broad, so what do you mean specifically by that? Are you referring to Northern Africa, Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, Western Africa,
Yeah,
Central
yeah. I
Africa?
think sure. Africa is sort of like saying somewhere in Europe. The whole of Europe is not same. The whole of Africa is not same. We are based out of Ghana, and when I say Africa, I'm primarily focusing on sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah. Okay.
So we are based out of Ghana, but we have networks in Madagascar, Comoros, and few other countries nearby where we will expand in a phase two.
Got it. And so so basically you're starting in Ghana and then you want to expand out into all of the sub-Saharan Africa entirely.
Yes, because if you create, the idea is to create a climate fund focused in agriculture, and if people are investing, they would want to diversify the investment and not put all their eggs in one basket. Because Africa for a Western investor is sort of like a high risk geography.
Hmm.
So, and given all the coups that is happening around in various countries, it makes sense that you diversify your investments in different jurisdictions as much as possible.
Yeah, it makes sense. In regards to your profit strategy, your monetization strategy, like how do you plan to make profit?
So, if you know a little bit about agriculture, like I grew up in India, and right from the 90s, business families were going to Africa and growing food. And the main reason was, if you can take that risk, if you can invest, and if you know people, the network and the farmers, if you have access to land, the profit percentages are close to almost over 100%, because the land and labor is so cheap. The only investment is the machines and the inputs, fertilizers. What we are doing is we already have access to 1,000 acres, which will grow to 5,000. Uh, we are actually bringing regenerative agriculture methodology in Africa in those lands. So as we grow, as we increase the acreage of regenerative agriculture, our dependence on fertilizer also goes down, because the whole idea behind climate smart or regenerative agriculture is the soil will produce its fertilizers itself. So that is one big cost input that will go away over a period of time. But even with the fertilizers on, we are seeing a profit over 50% by just producing food. And then on top of that, you have circular byproducts, which, if you look at the palm industry, oil palm, everything that comes out of the palm fruit can be sold to soap manufacturers and biofuel and other stuff. Biochar is also interesting side produce. And the third revenue stream is carbon credits, which is very much in its infancy. So, the financial case is pretty straightforward, provided you understand that there is a lot of food required. Demand for food is going to be uh, everlasting, not everlasting, but it'll be there for the next 30 years, because Africa is going to go through a population explosion and they need food. So either you go there and make that food sustainably, or somebody else will do it in a non-sustainable way, but whoever does it will make money. So we are doing there, we're creating a platform where land could be underutilized land could be transformed into a carbon sink that produces food. And for every acre of food that we produce, there is a carbon offset. And all the farmers, the investors, and all stakeholders benefit from it.
Yeah, makes sense. Can you break down for the audience carbon credits and how that could be a revenue generation for you?
So I think when I talk about regenerative agriculture, a lot of investors, and especially the crypto people and people who want to tokenize these real assets, they're very interested in carbon
Mhm.
credits, but they don't realize that carbon credits, even if it's at its most, even if you optimize the processes, they don't really contribute a lot in the overall scheme of things from financial standpoint. It's
Hmm.
basically like 10-15% of the total food production, but it's an important indicator or an important KPI for climate finance to flow, because it basically verifies that you're producing the food sustainably. By that I
Yeah.
mean, the most important aspect of regenerative agriculture is the fact that the topsoil of arable land needs to maintain a certain degree of carbon content on it. So over the period, what's happened is, as the land holdings have become smaller and the farmers have been deprived of maintenance finance or operational finance, and also they've, over a period of time, they don't have the incentive to really look after the land. The topsoil has been completely degraded. So
Yeah.
when you hear about photosynthesis that we were taught in school, plants, they absorb carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide goes under and then gets stored in the soil. That converts into coal, and that is good for the topsoil. Also, it has to be a little bit of carbon there. But because of the degradation of topsoil, all the carbon that gets absorbed is released soon after into the environment, and that is reason why agriculture has become one of the leading contributors of CO2 in the atmosphere. Uh, there are other you know side practices such as poultry, dairy, rice production, methane. All of these add up to the GHG emissions. But essentially, if you take care of the carbon topsoil, you can have a good chunk of the carbon that is outside in the air back where it belongs, under the soil. And that's what carbon credits are doing. They are constantly, and the quality of carbon credits is also something that is a work in progress. A lot of new technologies. We're working with a few companies here where we're bringing a lot of nuance in the carbon capture. Let's say from day one to 1 month after that, after the harvest, after a couple of harvest, and then you see an iterative increase in the carbon in topsoil, and that is the kind of qualitative insights you need in order to really capture high quality carbon credits. which are likely to be sold at a higher price in voluntary carbon markets. So the whole space is very new. What it lacks is standardization. And I think right now it is essentially at a stage where if you can produce a carbon credit, verifying it by any other third party certifications, and there is a buyer who finds value in it, he'll buy it. I think at some point, as technology grows and environmental consciousness grows and regulations grow, both the supply side of the data collection and the transparency in how we capture the carbon, and the demand side will they raise their bar, and both prices and the quality of carbon credits will increase.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so are you currently stationed right now in Accra, Ghana, or where is the company actually at? Do you have boots on ground in Ghana right now?
So we have boots on ground for the last 7 years. As I said, the original operation was from my co-founder's company called Green Earth Agro, which was essentially a palm processing company. But because of its interlinkages with the farmers and all the good work it's done, it set up health clinics, computer centers, a lot of logistics around that village. We now have access to land where farmers are leasing their farmland to us, where
Mm.
we're going to open that investment to that land over to the investors. So let me give you exactly the problem we are solving. It is a no-brainer that a lot of food needs to be grown in Africa, and for that you need a lot of capital infusion. That money is not coming uh, because of the financial infrastructure in Africa is completely non-existent. So let's say a farmer who has 10 acres of land, and that land belongs to his family. It's been handed over from generation to generation over to his family right now. It does not exist on paper because the land ownership is customary. And because it
Mm.
doesn't exist on paper, the land is not considered a collateral by the bank, right?
Wow.
So the most important asset that the farmer has cannot be collateralized. And
Hmm.
that's why most of these people, 96% of smallholders in Ghana are unbanked, have no financial access,
Hmm.
right? So they grow food from the land they own, and whatever land that is unused is unused. And while 11% or close to 10 to
Hmm.
15% of Ghana faces some form of food security. So that is almost criminal. You have so much land around, you can't even make use of it. And all this climate
Hmm.
finance is going to renewables and all kinds of things. So if you don't address the food crisis, the climate goals can go for a toss because you can't fight climate change with empty stomachs. There's a reason why SDG 1 and SDG 2 are 1 and 2. No poverty and no hunger,
Yeah.
right? They're not 15, 16. There is a reason why they're in a 1 and 2. And we believe that if you really bring a carbon negative aspect to food production, you can solve both these crises, with one stone. And that is essentially the case we're building, that there's a lot of money to be made. And in terms of impact, I don't see a more impactful investment than this. Uh,
Yeah.
but to get to the first point, like, to cross that first chasm, you need to make that the most important factor of production, that is land, investable. So what we do is, as a foreigner, I cannot buy land in Ghana, or that is pretty much the case with all of Africa. But you can get into a long-standing land lease. So we have leased these arable lands from the community, that is over sort of supervised by a chief. The lease process is a long drawn process. At the end, we get to register that land with the government cadastral, and that gets a stamp of approval, a government stamp of approval. It gets registered in the government registry, and then it becomes an official piece of land that has a recognized owner, recognized leasee, and recognized set of investors if somebody wants to come in. And that essentially provides a land tenure security, just like any other business. Land is even more crucial to agriculture, and that's why that land has to be brought into the government registry and brought on paper. And we're not stopping at that. We're also digitizing it by bringing that same information on blockchain, now bringing immutability to it. Now, blockchain and real estate is already a lot of literature around it, how they are just a great match in heaven. But now you put that whole analogy on agriculture, it also not only brings business capital, it also feeds people and creates a whole potential for bringing out a new middle class of farmers in Africa. Because if Africa has to develop, you cannot jump over agriculture. It is 40% contributor to GDP. So agriculture has to be digitized, has to be given the right infrastructure and brought into the mainstream. Otherwise, none of the other industries will really develop. So we are essentially, what we're doing is we're increasing the land tenure security in agriculture, because I think that is the primarily most important thing before we start growing food and carbon credits and creating a digital supply chain from there on. Because if the
Yeah.
land doesn't exist on paper, then nothing, everything else is air.
Yeah, absolutely. How many farmers do you think where in which they're not leveraging all of their land? Like they have a percentage that they're not using or monetizing a part of their land.
It's
Like what would
it's
you say
it's
in
anybody's
percentages?
guess. It's anybody's guess because nothing is documented. You will not get that data. It might be the documentation might be better in Kenya and South Africa and few other countries, and completely non-existent in some other countries. In Ghana, our guess is I think around 15 to 20% of arable land is on lease. So you assume that the one that is on lease probably is registered, and around 80% is probably not registered. So we are bringing the scope is rest 80% that can be brought on the government cadastral and can be made investable for international capital to flow in.
Yeah, makes sense. You mentioned that you had boots on ground for 7 years. So you've been working on this project for 7 years, or the boots
My
on ground just
co-founder
been
is
on for 7 years?
I've been on this for last 2 years. My co-founder has boots on ground, and that's how we managed to get this land, and that's how we have also identified more land in the vicinity to sort of continue this land expansion
Yeah.
on the platform. At some point, we intend to create a platform, land stewardship platform, where anybody can put on their land for investment as long as they meet certain verification criteria.
Yeah, so you could kind of create like would you digitize it, like make it like an NFT type of platform, or like how would you go about doing it? Would it just
We
be
called it
like,
NFT, but then NFT
yeah,
became a dirty word, and people didn't understand. When you talk about NFT, they think they're creating some kind of a metaverse in Ghana, and So essentially, it is every real estate or a document that is capturing the real estate is an NFT because you cannot replicate it. It's non-fungible, right? So yes,
yeah,
it serves the same purpose, and we did that, but we want to keep it simple, and we're calling it token. And a token is basically a certificate that verifies your ownership of the co-lease of the land,
mm,
and everything that the land produces in the future for the next 50 years, you will get a slice of it. So that is the role of that token, and you can obviously trade it in the secondary market when we come to that stage.
yeah, yeah. It makes absolute sense. When you talk about the legalities, how long does that process typically? Because you've went through it already, from the moment of where you go to the farmer who has a percentage of the land they're not using, and then you want to take that percentage and then lease it to yourself, and then give it to the government, so the government can give the stamp of approval. Like how long is that entire process?
If you want to start tomorrow and you have so basically the registration the registration cost is more than the cost of the lease of the land, right? That's how screwed up the whole process is. But it still takes anywhere between, if you like, the other part is how many people, how many intermediaries in the government, outside the government, do you know, right? Because they'll need n number of people to come and sign. It's a pretty bureaucratic and old school process where most of the stuff is done on paper, which is now biting dust in some government office. So
Mhm.
everything said and done, it can take up to 8 to 9 months, extendable to 12 months if things fall apart. But because we've been there, we have MOUs with the Ministry of Agriculture, and my co-founder has really, you know, Essentially, it is you connect with the community. If the farmers see value in bringing the land on your platform, if you build that trust, because otherwise that land is lying vacant. If they can make use of that land and get 10% of the operating profits, why wouldn't they? And they're also, as a byproduct of the whole process, they will also be getting digital identities. We can these are all things and details that we are not touching upon right now because these are little distractions. The more important piece is getting access to land and start the money and start growing food. The farmers are like they have an option of working on the field and learn new good agriculture practices, how to the whole essence of carbon farming, and uh, getting to like educate them on how to optimize their own land, and the whole carbon credit aspect of it. When you sell the produce, when you share some data on the app, all of this will be verified and they'll be paid for that contribution, for proving the sustainability of the food on their own land, as opposed to not having that access and just doing their own farming on a land that they can't even use fully. So I think it's a win-win for everyone, and that is essentially the case we are building. I think for 1,000 acres, we are looking at close to 30,000 farmers who will be impacted directly by this, with a wage increase of 3 to 5 times of what they're earning right now. This is outside the money they've got by leasing the land.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's a really great impact and really great calculation on that too as well, which it's going to help the entire economy as a whole, because they're going to have more purchasing power to spend. But I wanted to
Yep.
ask you, where does blockchain tie into this? Because that's where I'm a little bit still confused about. What do you need the blockchain for specifically?
So, firstly, the whole immutability aspect of blockchain solidifies the land credentials, right? You cannot fudge it.
Hmm.
If there are a lot of disputes around who owns that land, where does that land end, where does it begin, right? So all
Yeah,
these miscreants
yeah.
get taken care of. Firstly, number one. Number two, if there is no blockchain, if I, as an investor in New York or Indonesia or anywhere, if I'm, my conscience tells me that I will not invest in Nestle because they make a mess of this planet. I would rather invest in a sustainable green food production or anything that is, it has the very, let's say I convince the investor that this is 100% green project, and overall there's a carbon negativity associated with it. But without blockchain, you cannot fractionalize that investment. I cannot bring it down to a few dollars. If it's a normal stock, you can't buy 1 acre of land, right? In Africa. If
Yeah,
you
yeah.
So that is another great advantage of bringing that fractionalization and sort of really tokenizing, slicing the land up in any which way you want, depending on the demand, dovetailing the demand and the supply, and optimizing the financial outcome and the environmental outcome of it. Uh, Third is the fact that when you do all these audits, environmental audits that you have, I don't know if you know of palm. Palm oil is very, there is a notoriety aspect associated with it because 80% of palm comes from Indonesia and Malaysia, which is where most of these deforested lands were, lands was cleared, and most of that oil has a history of deforestation, right? So that's where it gets a lot of the bad rap. But the palm coming from Africa is not has nothing to do with the palm coming from oil from Indonesia. Palm Origin of palm kernel oil is Ghana, and if you go to these forests or these farmlands, you'll see palm trees naturally growing there. You know, uh, if we can capture the provenance of that origin and sell it as a sustainable palm oil, people who want to buy it will buy it. Uh, the certification that is required for any palm to be sold to an FMCG company is a certification called RSPO, right? and it comes at a very very it's a quite an exorbitant price tag. The normal smallholder cannot afford it, and all these the verifiers who come, the different governance that takes into place your audit, your income statements, they happen every with an interval. You don't know what is happening between the first audit and the second audit, right? It's very analog. With blockchain, with smart contracts, you can, on satellite data that you capture, you can do it at a real time, and any anomaly that is happening, right, can be captured. So you don't have to wait with different audits. So that is a technology aspect of blockchain that can trigger things and then record it, and bring the transparency that is missing in that field. So I would say these are like the main, essentially the main components of it. I can list down a few more, but if you have to really, summarize everything in a line, essentially what blockchain is doing is it brings out the decentralized nature, the trustless nature of its governance to a field which is completely devoid of any trust, right? So the complete trust is lacking, and it brings trust. So that's why blockchain is a really good technology fit in this case.
Yeah, makes sense. And about the distribution of the food. So once you've been able to attain the opportunity to then grow the food on the farmer's land, how are you distributing the food then to the people? What is that process like, or how did you plan that process to look like?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So the distribution is directly tied to how much the food is produced, right? So I
Hmm.
think currently we are at 1100 acres. Till 3000 acres, our buyers are not going to change. We are selling the food to the local supermarkets in Ghana,
Hmm.
and the circular byproducts will be sold in the poultry and livestock areas. Everything will have a very very short farm to fork, so that there is minimum wastage, and people are fed, right? As
Hmm.
we become close to 5K and above, there are a lot of ways in which you can distribute the food.
Hmm.
At 10,000 acres, you will not see us selling food. You will be seeing us selling food and oil. So we can integrate downstream, create a refinery that will give
Hmm.
jobs to the same farmers who are growing food now, and
Hmm.
more higher end skills for running management, all of that, all done locally, plus uh, twice the revenue, and probably even higher profit margins. So the distribution then becomes different. You might be able to sell, you'll have enough output to run the factory, as well as meet the needs of big FMCG clients likes of Nestle, Ferrero, and the likes.
Yeah. What are you prioritizing with what you're potentially wanting to grow? What is the main types of food that you want to grow potentially? Like what is the main
So we are
priority?
not we are not growing anything that is not germane to the soil. But the
Hmm.
regenerative aspect of agriculture will tell us also a science behind what is a better option to grow stuff in it. Over a period of time, we'll be building a precision farming technology stack that, because you are farming over a large swaths of land, you don't, and which probably will be grown for the first time. There is like just herbs, trees that have, vegetation that needs to be cleared for the land to really grow food. This is agricultural land, not forest, so not being used. So when it's
Hmm.
cleared for the first time, you don't know what's lying under the soil, right? How fertile is
Yeah.
it? What is the carbon content? What is the NPK? When you do a couple of harvests, then you collect data and you realize, okay, the top half of this field is got good moisture, the second half is little dry for some reason, that soil needs more fertilizers or whatever. But once we do that iterate process, the AI will be able to tell on the new untouched land what is the potential underlying qualities of the soil. So we don't have to redo the whole process again and again, right? We will touch the new piece of land with little more insight into what could potentially, how the soil could be under it. So we optimize our inputs. If there is no fertilizer required, you will not use it. If there is no bore well required in a particular part of the field, we will not dig a bore well there. That is that is a big chunk of the cost that could be optimized, right? Uh,
Mm,
and in terms of what we are growing, so we're starting with we will split the acreage 45% on the cash crops and 45 on the perennial crops, which will be palm and coconut. Ideally, we wanted to, so the two sets, you can see the cash crop as sort of like something that keep the house running. Every 3 months you can sell, right? And the
mm-hmm,
big margin, so that you have a positive cash flow, keep running the business, buying more machines, leasing more land, and then improving processes. uh, the second part is the perennial crop, which is, think of it as a long term asset, because palm
mm-hmm,
and coconut, once they mature, that takes 3.5 to 4 years, they keep giving fruit for 30 years.
mm,
So that is like a continuous money making machine for 30 years with very little maintenance. So that's a long term asset. So if you have the financial sort of leeway, you would want to maximize palm and coconut, but we don't have that, and there is anyways a lot of news about shortage of carbs in Ghana. There is a rice
mm-hmm,
shortage in Africa because India has shut down its import. So we have we're starting out with 45% on the cash crops that will have maize, cassava, onions, potatoes, and which will go directly into the food market, right?
mm-hmm.
And the other 45% is palm and coconut that will take 3 to 4 years to sort of start giving the revenues.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I want to shift over to a little bit like the preservation strategies, because as you know, you end up losing some margins to not being able to preserve food properly and so on. So, do you have preservation strategies in place already, or have you thought about this?
So think of this. So this is a piece of land. Okay,
Mm-hmm,
it's there's nothing on it. It's just land with trees and hedges that needs to be cleared. So we will have to plot these storage facilities, logistics facilities, pickup facilities, irrigation facilities on this piece of land, right?
mm-hmm,
It's a one-time investment that will, when you say transformation, we are transforming everything on top of the land, under the land, right?
mm-hmm,
And storage is a very, very critical piece, because if you look at Ghana, the hunger numbers, they are most serious in the north of Ghana, and the numbers sort of go down as you go from north to south. And south there is no hunger. We are based in the south, which is well endowed with the rain, and you can have three harvests. But in the north, because the rain screws up one harvest, there is just two harvests, and most of the hunger is between the months that are between the two crop cycles. And because there is no logistics, the food hardly reaches the market. There is no storage. So I think a lot of food gets wasted in Ghana. What we intend to do is, we want to store, have create at least 2 to 2 months of storage facility, that the food that can then reach the market in 2 months, where it's really really needed and food is scarce, right?
mm-hmm,
So that is what we're doing. And given the margins that we have, all of that will can be taken care of with all the money that will be reinvested back into the business. And the good thing is, the cost dynamics are such that the moment you cross 3,000 acres, you don't need any more external funding,
mm. Okay. And can you break that down a little bit? Why?
because the economies of scale really kick in, and the food margins will be one big spike, and you can expect a spike every 8 to 12 months from now on. Russia
Yeah.
again stopped certain food products from Ukraine. Last time that it happened, they stopped sunflower oil. The
Mm-hmm.
palm oil prices doubled in Africa, and Ghana
Wow.
was one of the beneficiaries, right? So these anomalies will continuously to hit, and it's very simple. The more land you have, the more food you grow, right? And our job is to maximize the land yield, because Africa is historically has had the worst yields. The land that is producing one ton per acre is producing 8 tons per acre in the US. Obviously, US uses all kinds of fertilizers and has these monocultures. We might not reach those levels, but at least we can reach somewhere middle between 4 to 5 tons, right? And once
Hmm.
you do that, so the more land you have, the more food you produce, the higher the margin. Anyways, you're selling something that is in scarce commodity, so you'll always make
Hmm.
money. You don't have your marketing and sales expense is zero. People come to your farm and collect it, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so it's basically the more land you can bring and the more land you can transform, the more rest of it is process management.
Yeah. I also, what about the competition? You know, is there any competition, and are they, because I'm sure the local markets are also buying from other farms too as well. So what about the competition?
See, the competition in something as basic as food will always be there. You need to define who you see yourself as, who you see as your competition. For us, we are a land stewardship, which is converting every piece of land into a carbon sink that produces sustainable food. And for every ton of food that we produce, there is
Mm,
offset. Who else is doing it? There are a lot of people who do that in US, and Acre Trader is a popular one. A lot of other land stewardship programs in France, Germany that do carbon farming and all of that, but they are catering to super rich farmers. Nobody's doing
mm,
that in Africa. Nobody's doing that in Ghana, because
yeah,
getting access to land is a big black box. Unless you
yeah.
know somebody you can trust, you will not have access to land, right? Since one of my co-founders, my
Yeah.
CEO, is based out of Ghana, he's almost, he's very close to getting a Ghanaian citizenship. So he's built that trust, and that trust cannot be just, you know, overridden overnight.
Hmm.
You need to, people will not just hand over your land to you
Yeah.
because you're giving them
Do,
money.
do,
They will give it to you because they trust you. They've seen your work, and they've seen you making money. Okay. So when people, the farmers in the nearby village, they see how this pilot, if you want to call it that, created uh, 1,000 jobs, had a orders of magnitude impact on their daily wages. How the kids are now, whatever, getting a better access to jobs and education and other skills, are will be naturally inclined to explore, also bringing access to their lands by bringing the lands on the government pedestal. But that is not even like a first step. I think that organic growth will come once the model speaks for itself. We already have identified 10x land expansion areas where once the project starts and we have the capital, we will get more land on the cadastral.
yeah. So how much land do you have currently, and what stage of development are you at right now?
So we have 1,100 acres. 100 is currently under farming, and the first harvest will be ready in February. That is also when the remaining 1,000 acres, which is going through this land registration process, would have completed the registration and will be open for investment in February. So in February, the first harvest of 100 acres will be done, and it will be ready for the second cycle, and the fresh 1,000 will be ready for plantation. We'll have to clear the 1,000 acres and grow food there, and we intend to
Okay,
double
and
that acreage by next year.
got it. And so you're opening up funding. Is it for pre-seed or is it seed round?
It's, you can call it pre-seed.
Okay, and how much are you looking to raise?
We are looking to raise 1 million, but because I
And what
think
valuation?
at a valuation of 10 million.
Okay,
So we are
okay,
giving 10% equity on this.
yeah, yeah, makes sense. And are you, so you don't really need to spend anything on the marketing at all. It's just really just more the infrastructure. You think it's going to sell
The
itself
marketing is the marketing
because
is
the demand
catered
is so
to the people who will invest, right? The marketing is catered to the impact investors. We are saying that, okay, and the other side to this investment is the fact that any climate fund who, and that there is a lot of need for them to put money in agriculture, which is where most of these emissions are coming from, but the money doesn't go there because the deployment size is usually somewhere between 15 to 20 million. It
yeah.
doesn't come below that, and there are very few agriculture properties that has the capacity to deploy all that money because the land holdings are small.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like a vicious cycle. We want to not only, I mentioned the fractionalization of, the tokenization, how it gives a small window for everyone, right? Provided you have the license. We want to cut down the ticket size for agriculture investment down to even $100 if you want to. We're not quite there yet, but we are cutting down to, some credited investors who want to come in with a small ticket size. If you have 50,000 lying around, if you if you want to put 50,000 buying Bitcoin, thinking that Bitcoin will never be hacked, that is the underlying premise. Other cryptocurrencies, I don't know, but the case for Bitcoin has been made. It's safe, and it's over a long period. It will always give me big returns, at least every 4 years. Then I think this investment is safer than that, because you're getting
Mm.
a 50% return, but there is a big impact. There's no, the energy argument doesn't affect us. So I think there are investors out there who are looking for real impact, but they don't have, they come with big ticket sizes.
Hmm.
Now we are catering to the same sentimentality, but we have reduced the ticket size. That also reduces the risk of investment in Africa.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes absolute sense. Where can people find you and your project on the internet?
Yeah, you can look up foodforfuture.io. It's
Okay. I'll leave links. I'll leave links down below in the description.
right.
So
I'll send you the links. It's a
yeah.
prototype that we are currently making, and we are capturing what the current state of data capture is. But I think in one month's time, it will look very different once the harvest is done.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. And you said in February, that's when the pre-seed, that's where you're going to open up the funding, right?
We're talking. I think there is a parallel crowdfunding raise that we are also exploring.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think February is when the land will be available for farming. But we need the money for the most. The investment requirement is from the heavy machineries that we'll need to clear the ground, land preparation. That is the capex that is
Yeah.
required. So essentially, if I have to just summarize it, to grow food anywhere, you need land, you need labor, you need equipment, heavy machines, and you need inputs. We have taken care of land and labor. We need money for the equipments.
Got it. Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, we got to do this again sometime to keep up and see the progress of your project, man. I appreciate you for coming on the Mooncast, man. And
Oh, it
peace.
was great. I would love to know more about Mooncast. I looked at your website. I think there is a connection with the Stanford Web3 Association, or if I'm
Yeah,
recalling the name correctly.
yeah, correct. Yeah. So I'm a mentor at the Stanford AI and Web3 Research Labs too, as well. So yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're definitely going to be in touch because yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and your project definitely has potential, and maybe I can link you to potential investors or
Was
incubators.
great because I think, as I mentioned, my co-founder Ushank is currently in COP 28. So if
Hmm.
anybody in your network, especially from the Stanford Web3 Association, anybody in the impact investment space who is also in Dubai right now, I think it's a
Hmm.
good time to sort of meet in person, because I think all of this is good, but I think meeting in person over a drink is a different level of interaction. So if you could, maybe connect the dots, that will be really, really helpful. And we'll be in touch. I look forward to our other podcast, and any data points you need for the marketing purposes, let me know. I'll send you everything that I can.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. All right, man. Take care. Have a good one. Peace.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.